Hey everyone, so in this video, I'm gonna walk you through my process and how I put together a Twilight exterior shot. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Matthew. I am an interiors and architecture photographer based here in Kansas City. And more specifically, I am in the Lee's Summit area of Kansas City. Today I'm doing a Twilight exterior shot on the house you see right behind me for a custom home builder. So I actually took a few interior shots for the builder of this house several weeks ago. It was on what's called the Kansas City Parade of Homes. And unfortunately, as of right now, you can see all these little signs that are set up that actually are advertising how it was on the parade. I think it's pretty obvious. I don't want those in the shot. I don't think the builder is gonna want those in the shot either. So to set up the shot for tonight, step one, I gotta move these stupid things. So just to walk you through my thought process as far as where I'm going to move them, because these things they're not light, they're actually fairly heavy. Whenever I'm shooting a house now, again, this house is not, it's not the most extravagant. It's actually, you know, in relative to some of the bigger houses I've shot, it's fairly simple, fairly unassuming. Generally, when we have, if you look at it, the garage itself takes up about 2/3 of the front of this whole house. Personally, as a rule of thumb, when I'm shooting a house like this, I will try to take a shot of the house at a slight angle with the camera slightly more on the side opposite of where the garage is. Otherwise, if I shoot the house at an angle and I set up the camera kind of near the corner of where most of the garage is gonna be huge, and the actual house part of the shot where you see through the windows in the front door, it's gonna be the part that's furthest away from the camera. So the reason I say that is, since I'm gonna be setting up over here, I'm just gonna move these signs a little bit this way, maybe slightly on the sidewalk or just the end of the driveway. I don't really need to move them too far away. I hate these things. This is fun. Make sure all your friends know that being an architecture photographer is all fun and glamorous. So I'm covered in dirt. This is great. Okay, the obstacles are pretty much out of the way. Now we need to set up the camera for the actual shot. So I don't even have the camera set up, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna shoot this pretty wide. And the reason being, since this is a fairly unassuming house, don't get me wrong, it's very, very nice. I'm afraid that if I shot it at too narrow of a focal length, it's gonna just kind of make it a little boring. It's just gonna flatten it out. So by shooting wide, we're gonna exaggerate just some of the depth and angles that exist on the house, but you really wouldn't notice if you were across the street or even further away. I'm getting bit. Obviously, I wanna shoot it at a little bit of an angle, and I wanna get as much of the front door in it as possible without doing kind of a one-point perspective style shoot. And I'll level everything up, make sure we're in focus, get the SD card that I inevitably always forget in the car. There we go. And just so I have the data, I'm gonna go ahead and take a series of just kind of a bracket of shots. I'm gonna go roughly about 1.5 stops overexposed and take a series of shots all the way to about maybe 1.5, even 2 stops underexposed. Again, just so I have it. Okay, so now I get to take a little bit of a breather. Setting up a Twilight shot sometimes can be pretty stressful because you're under the gun as far as timing, because full disclosure, I arrived at this house probably a little bit later than I would have liked. Generally, I like to try to arrive at a Twilight shoot about half an hour or more before the sun actually hits the horizon, before actual sunset. I got here about 20 minutes before sunset, so I had to set up this camera to do this video, and then not only that, move all this stuff and then set up the camera. So as a general rule of thumb, I would say give yourself at least a half hour, if not more, and then that way if you get out of the car and it's a fairly easy setup, you got time to chill, you got time to take a breather, just relax, and maybe just double check and fine tune a couple things just to really make sure you got your composition locked in. Okay, so the camera is set up. Sunset today is at 8:47 and it is 8:46 right now. So this is the point where I'm gonna set myself a timer to go off about every 2, maybe 2.5 minutes, just to, again, take that series of bracketed shots. Whatever the camera tells me is a properly exposed photo, I'm gonna take a series of shots up to about 2 stops overexposed, all the way down to about 2 stops underexposed. Sometimes when doing these shots, the mystery is when do you get that absolutely perfect exposure where you get that really cool look where the interior light is about at the same brightness level as the exterior light? And the answer is it's hard to tell because there's a lot of different variables. One being cloud cover. We're somewhat fortunate tonight. There's really not a single cloud in the sky. The other factor is what direction does the house face? Because a house that faces the sunset, the light change is going to be very, very different. You're going to even have a slightly different look than if the front of a house faced away from the sunset, and obviously north, south, things like that. So again, since there is no hard and fast rule, what I do is I just play the numbers game. I set up the camera, and again, about every 2 minutes, I set myself a timer and I take that series of bracketed shots. And yes, sometimes I will have 40, 50, 60 plus exposures of just the one shot of the house. But again, it's a numbers game, and all I'm looking for is just that one perfect exposure where I just get that awesome, stellar, just killer Twilight shot. Hey Siri, set a timer to go off in 2 minutes.
2 minutes, counting down.
So since I'm waiting for the timer to go off, so as not to give you a vague answer, my general rule of thumb is whatever sunset is, if you're on a fairly clear night or even just scattered clouds in the sky, generally anywhere from about 5 to I'd say max 20 minutes after sunset is when you're gonna have some of these absolutely stellar shots with just all natural lighting where an exposure just might look completely fine on its own, even just with some subtle adjustments to highlights and shadows. All right, timer went off. Oh, and you want to know another secret tip that most architectural photographers will never tell you when it comes to shooting twilights? Go to the bathroom first. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details, but all I would say is this, is that right now I am thanking our Lord and Savior that there was a porta-john right across the street. Yeah, you're not going to see that tip or trick on a whole lot of photography tutorials, are you? So I'm going to guess we're pretty much right at that time where we're pretty much getting kind of the money shot right now, where the outside light is about on par with where the interior light is. I still set up a timer from here on out to still go off about every 2 minutes. Again, just to really cover my bases. It's a little overkill, but I would rather be safe than sorry. Oh, and bug spray. Make sure you have bug spray on you just in case you get hit by some sort of swarm or you have to stand in the middle of a field and you're just getting eaten alive by mosquitoes or whatever bugs are out there. One key sign you can look for when you're looking at the front of the house to see if it's kind of right at that perfect time to take your shot is when the light coming from the house or some of the exterior lights, you notice that some of the objects on the front of the yard, their brightest side is the side that's facing the house. So for instance, in this case, I can tell the two lights that are above the garage are throwing light at some of the rocks in the front of the yard. Now, when I look at the rocks, I can actually see that the brighter side of the rocks or some of the highlights of the rocks, it's the side that's facing the house. And the side that's facing me, or in this case, the actual sunset itself, is in shadow. Okay, so I am pretty confident I already have the exposure that I'm gonna use as my base or pretty much my money shot exposure that is gonna have that perfect balance of the inside light matched with the outside light. Now, I know I said I don't do this whole flashy light painting look, but what I do like to do still is sort of embellish the light that is coming from the house, or in this case, the light that is coming towards the camera from the house windows and the exterior lighting. So I'm gonna change the ISO to 400. I'm gonna keep the aperture at f8, but now I'm gonna shoot at like 1/125th of a second. So it's pretty obvious shooting at those settings. Any photo I take of the front of the house, it's gonna be pretty much pitch dark. Now you might ask why. Generally what I like to do is use my hot light, like I said, to sort of enhance or embellish the light coming from the windows. The problem is I left it at home. So right now I'm gonna set up the cam ranger and the radio trigger, grab my flash out of the trunk of my car, and again, just use those flash pops to, again, I'm mimicking the light coming from the house as if it's coming from the windows and the exterior lights to, in this case, add a little bit more texture to some of the trees and the rocks of the front yard and maybe get a really cool glow coming over the grass, say in front of, I'm thinking out loud too much. I'm just gonna grab the flash and do this. This one, mimic the light coming from the light outside the front door. And since I can't get inside the house right now, I think it's locked, I'm just mimicking light coming from this set of windows, just shooting at 2 angles. Now my last step in doing these twilight shots is to just simply take exposures for the light coming from the windows, kind of getting that nice tungsten-like glow. I'm still at ISO 400, still at f8, and right now taking exposures anywhere from about maybe 1.5 seconds all the way to about 1/2 second, maybe even a little quicker. Guys, that's it. We're finished up with the shoot. Let's get behind the computer and start putting this thing together.